Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Alicia, prophetess ordained by the Lord, and today He wants me to speak on God-ordained spouses who are standing for prodigals that are physically married to someone else. Now, I've heard a lot of different statements being made about people who are saying that their God-ordained spouse is someone who's already taken another person as their spouse. And when that statement is being made, these people who are speaking are saying God would never, or God will not have you standing for a person who's already taken another as their spouse. And I'm here to say that is not true. God indeed has people standing for their God-ordained spouse who is married to another person who is not their God-ordained spouse. The Lord wants these people who are standing for these kind of prodigals to know that you're not confused. You heard him right, and not everyone has the revelation to this particular situation. There are people who are speaking against it because they're standing for a prodigal who is not married, and therefore they do not have the revelation that was given to the people who are standing for a prodigal who is married, which is fine because we hear in part and we know in part, right? So that doesn't make these other voices a lie. They just don't know the revelation concerning these situations. That's it. And this is why we should be very careful of speaking about things that we're not a part of and that we don't have the revelation to, because God is not a God in a box, and we're learning daily, even more so now, and knowledge is increasing. So things that we were taught before now, there are things that we were taught out of carnal understanding, and therefore we're still in that carnal mindset thinking that this is what these scripture means. For instance, the scripture, let what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And also the scripture that speaks against divorce, that God hates divorce, which is true. But the divorce that God hates is the one of which he had ordained those people. Because again, we're going to go back to that scripture. Let what God has joined together, no man put asunder. Right? So if God has joined two people together and divorce come in play, God hates that divorce. Because literally, those people would be coming against the will of God. Right? But if God never joined you to someone, or someone to you, was it really God? I think we have this understanding that once we choose a person, we decide to marry them, or they decide to marry us. We go before a minister or whomever performs marriages, and we say the vows that they would lead us into. That simply means it's a God thing, and it's a done deal, and it's a covenant between us and God. And that's another lie. There are covenants being made outside of the will of God that has nothing to do with God. Even if we put his name on it, even if we go before ministers It has nothing to do with God. And when we're outside of God's will, his hands is not on it. And we cannot now bring his hands on it when trouble comes, right? So indeed, let what God has joined together, no man put asunder. So now God has these spouses standing for prodigals who he has joined together before the beginning of time. Like the Lord had told me, my God-ordained spouse and I were ordained to be together for his purpose, for his glory, before we were even formed in our mother's womb. Therefore, what he, God, has put together before we even knew anything about each other, let no man put that asunder. And because the enemy has been coming in, destroying all these God-ordained marriages, because he knew who we were, he knew what God has promised, he knew what was resting on us being together. God-ordained unions are not just about having a partner. It is not about us having company, being able to have children, to somebody to hang out with, and all the different reasons why some people wants to get married. Now these will be a part of the union, but it's not the whole purpose of the union. There's souls riding on these unions. It's a ministry. And we're gonna go look at Esther, the book of Esther. Esther had to marry King Ahasuerus. Hopefully I'm calling his name right. She had to. It was her purpose. She was ordained to do a work to save her people during his reign. And the only way that could have happened is if she was in the position that God ordained for her. Did you think that God didn't know that King Ahasuerus was going to take Vashti as his wife? You think God missed that? No. But as we can all see, Vashti was not compatible for King Ahasuerus. And he did put her away. And took Esther as his new queen, just in time for Esther's purpose to be birthed, right? At an appointed time. My God, it was an appointed time. Her destiny had to come forth in an appointed time. So Vashti was just a placeholder, because King Ahasuerus didn't know the will of God. Esther didn't even know the will of God. She probably at the time didn't even know why she was born, considering the stories that we know about her family. You know? But God had a purpose for her bigger than just her being married to the king. Just for clout. Right? But now, in the world's way, how we choose our spouses is based on how much they make, what their family background is, if they are pretty or handsome, if they're tall or short, skinny or fat, whatever. Everything is fleshly. Spiritually, we are not even considering, not all, but the majority of people are not considering nothing when it comes to purpose. So we go ahead and we make our choices with our free will, of course. But there's some unions that cannot just be do away with, as I should say. we're in the end times when the Father is bringing forth order in the land. As it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. There's testimony in the pain, depending on what situation you have come through, standing for your God-ordained spouse, the troubles you have gone through to get to your God-ordained spouse. Whatever the situation is, our pain is for a purpose. And I know that there are people out there saying that there's no such thing as God-ordained marriage in the Bible. And God-ordained marriages is demonic. And so many other things. And not everyone is standing for a God-ordained spouse. Though many people are jumping on the bandwagon, standing for someone that God never told them to stand for, praying for someone that God never told them to pray for. So when things are not falling into place, they're getting upset, then they're coming out, lashing out, calling God a lie, calling the people of God a lie, all because they were doing something they were not ordained to do. And it's the same thing that goes for the people who are standing on the other side of God ordained, who are standing for a prodigal who is not yet married, yet they're dating what they consider a counterfeit. And when some of them hear that there's others who are standing for a prodigal who is married to the counterfeit, they immediately wants to rise up and say, no, that's not your prodigal, because God wouldn't, and God wouldn't, and God just wouldn't do that. But God is doing that. God is God. His ways are not our ways, and our thoughts are not his thoughts. And I was one of those people who probably would have thought that too. I wouldn't have said it, but I would have thought it. Because when God told me that indeed I was standing for someone who I know has already taken someone else a few years back, I was perplexed. I went to God many times for revelation, for confirmation, for understanding. Because I don't want to be the one to cross God, to be in error because of my own lack of understanding, to think I heard what he said when I didn't hear properly, especially when it sounds very controversial against everything that I was taught. But God made it abundantly clear to me that my promise still stands, he said, and I'm restoring your family. The enemy had crept in, and he has disarranged what I've already originally arranged, and I'm reordering everything that he had disordered. So the person who my God-ordained spouse has taken is also somebody else's person. I was not seeking to be married. I was not seeking for a partner. I was in a good place with God, in a good place with myself, when the Lord revealed this to me. So I am not a person who is just saying that because I want to be with this particular person. No. You can ask the Father. Even me, I was shocked. Even me, I was shocked. But I thank the Lord for what he has done and what he is doing in our lives. And I can stand with ease because I was not looking to the left or to the right. And because of that, my stance is much easier because I was not expecting anything. So to the people who are behind the scenes wondering if you heard God right, if you're confused because like me, the interpretation of the scripture that we were given doesn't exactly align to what the Lord is asking us to do. But when the revelation comes from God himself, with understanding from him of his own word, we can rest assured that we're not doing anything wrong. If God said that person is your spouse, that person is your spouse. Not because you're saying it, but because God said it. What do we know? I know nothing. I didn't even know that I was ordained to be here. God knew me before he put me in my own mother's womb. And so he said about my union, it was ordained before we were even formed in our mother's womb, because there's souls riding on our ministry that is tied to our union. I say, God, have your way, have your way. I just want to fulfill my purpose on earth. Whatever it is that he asks of me, that is what I want to do. And if there's souls riding on my union, and this is the direction he's choosing for me to go, that's the direction I will go. So, with that being said, the answer to the question that many people do not want to venture into is, would God have you standing for a God-ordained spouse who's a prodigal that is married to another person? And the answer is yes. He will, he does, and he will do whatever he wants to for his will, for his purpose, for his glory. We do not get to tell God what he should and shouldn't do. God is God all by himself, and he knows everything. We know nothing except for what he reveals to us. And even then, sometimes he only reveals just so much. So if you're not in this position to speak on a thing that someone else is speaking on, for understanding, take it back to God and ask him, is it you who is doing this thing? But do not take it upon yourself thinking you have a better understanding of something that you're not even a part of than God himself, who is given the revelation and the wisdom to those who have to face that very thing. Don't be that person. I try my best not to speak on anything that anyone is speaking on, especially if I do not understand it. Unless the Father had revealed to me differently, then I'll just make a notation unless he says to speak on it. But if he has not revealed to me personally anything contrary to what another person is saying, I will hear it And if it doesn't sit with me, I'll take it to the Father. I would never just get up and say, God wouldn't do that. God wouldn't say that. Hey, listen, there's things that I thought God wouldn't do because it seems good to me. But I quickly learned that not everything is good is God. So it might be the right thing to do, but it's not a God thing to do. Do you understand? So it may sound bad. It may sound bad, but it's not bad because it's God who is doing it. Our perception is based on what we are taught. And we have to renew our mind because we were taught a lot of lies, to be honest. So we have to debunk many of what we were taught to relearn the right way, the right ways of God. That is my prayer every day. Father, teach me your way. Teach me your way. I pray you all be blessed. Have a blessed day. Bye.